My God, she looks like a patient, someone whispered behind me as I walked into the hall. The laughter that followed was sharp, cruel, the kind that slices through silk. Hi everyone, my name is Lena Ward. I'm 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I shaved my head for my 8-year-old daughter, Grace. Chemotherapy had taken her hair, and when she cried that she felt ugly, I handed her the clippers and said, "Then we'll match." But today wasn't about her. It was my husband's cousin's wedding, and apparently my bald head was the entertainment. As I took my seat near the back, I could feel eyes burn through me. The floral decorations, the string quartet, the soft chatter. None of it mattered once my husband pointed in my direction. He laughed. "That's my wife, everyone, the bald freak." The guests burst into nervous giggles. Even his aunt smiled tightly, as if cruelty was easier to accept when dressed as humor. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just placed my napkin neatly on the table, stood, and said, "Excuse me." He smirked, proud of himself for the joke. He didn't notice Grace's little bracelet still on my wrist, the one that read "My Hero." I walked out of that hall with my head high, every step steady, not because I wasn't broken but because I knew something he didn't. That humiliation wasn't the end. It was the beginning of an education he would never forget. And, by morning, the world would know who the real freak was. The drive home was quiet, not because I had nothing to say, but because rage needs silence to sharpen. The road blurred under the headlights, my husband's laughter still echoing in my skull. The bald freak. The words replayed until they lost shape and became something colder, motivation. When I got home, Grace was asleep on the couch, a soft cap covering her tiny head. I tucked the blanket around her and whispered, "Mommy's okay." But I wasn't. Not yet. I stood in the living room, staring at the framed photo of our wedding day, the day he promised to protect and cherish. The irony made me sick. I took the photo off the wall, placed it face down, and opened my laptop. For years, I had built his business quietly from behind the scenes, handling accounting, legal filings, marketing. Every document, every signature. My name was on more things than he remembered. And among those files was something I'd kept locked away, a folder labeled "Emergency." Inside were proof of tax evasion, fake invoices, and one particular transaction that could shut down everything he'd ever bragged about. I'd never planned to use it. But tonight, he gave me a reason. By 2 a.m., I'd emailed copies of those files to our lawyer, the same one who handled our joint accounts. Subject line, "Urgent review before submission." Then I sat in the dark, sipping cold tea, feeling the weight of years of quiet endurance lifting off my chest. He humiliated me in public. By sunrise, I'd humiliate him in court. At 7:42 a.m., my phone buzzed, once, twice, then nonstop. Unknown number. Then another. And another. I didn't answer. I just poured coffee and watched sunlight pour through the blinds. Grace stirred awake on the couch, her little voice sleepy. "Mommy, why are you up so early?" "Just cleaning up a mess, sweetheart." Before I could explain, a knock rattled the door. I opened it to see Officer Daniels, the same man who'd once helped us when our car was stolen. His tone was polite, but his eyes said everything. "Mrs. Ward? We need to speak with your husband. Is he home?" "He's not," I said evenly. "He's probably still at his cousin's wedding brunch." Daniels nodded, flipping open a file. "We received a report regarding fraudulent contracts and undeclared assets under his business. We were hoping you could help clarify some documents." I gestured to the folder on the counter. Perfectly labeled, perfectly timed. "You'll find everything you need there." He blinked, surprised. "You had this ready?" "Just good bookkeeping, officer." As they left, my husband's car screeched into the driveway. He jumped out, panic twisting his face. "Lena, what did you do?" I sipped my coffee, calm. "Exactly what you taught me to do. Keep records." He tried to grab my wrist, but Daniel stepped between us. "Sir, you'll need to come with us for questioning." Grace peeked from the hallway, her voice trembling. "Mommy, are we okay?" I smiled down at her, tucking her cap back into place. "We're better than okay, baby. We're free." By noon, the neighborhood knew. Police cars parked in front of our house like silent witnesses. Curtains twitched, phones recorded, whispers spread faster than smoke. My husband, Evan, stood on the porch, shouting, "This is a mistake. She's framing me." The officers ignored him as they read his rights. He'd always loved attention, now he had plenty. I stood in the doorway holding Grace's hand. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something that startled me. Relief. "Mommy," she whispered, "is Daddy in trouble?" I knelt beside her. Sometimes, when people do bad things for too long, life catches up. That's all this is. Across the street, my mother-in-law appeared, furious. "Lena, what have you done? You've ruined this family." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, I realized she was scared. Not of me, but of what her precious son had hidden. I held her gaze.
"No, Mary."
He did that himself. I just stopped cleaning up his messes. Inside, my phone buzzed with messages from Evan's colleagues and clients. "We had no idea. You are the one keeping everything together. Can we meet?" Each message was validation. Years of invisible labor finally seen. That night, Grace curled beside me on the couch as the local news ran the story. Businessman arrested on multiple fraud charges. Wife's evidence key to case. Evan's mugshot flashed across the screen. The same man who called me a bald freak now looked small, cornered, ordinary. I kissed Grace's forehead. "You see, baby? Sometimes, you don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to speak once and mean it." And I meant every word. The following week felt surreal, quiet, steady, like the air after a storm. Reporters camped outside for days, chasing the bald wife's revenge story. I didn't answer a single question. My silence spoke louder than any headline. Grace and I moved into a small coastal apartment. The ocean air was clean, salty, healing. Every morning, she'd press her tiny palm against her smooth head and giggle, "Mommy, we match." And I'd smile, because now, matching didn't mean pain. It meant freedom. One afternoon, I met with our lawyer, Mr. Cole. He laid a folder on the table. "Evan's assets have been frozen. The court acknowledges your contribution to the business. You're entitled to 51% ownership." I blinked. "So, technically it's mine?" Cole nodded.
"Yes."
"Every contract, every patent, every client list. You built it. Now you control it." I exhaled slowly, realization sinking in. The company he'd once bragged about owning was built on the numbers I filed, the deals I closed, the details I remembered. He took the credit. I built the empire. And now, he'd watch me rebuild it. Without him. As I left the office, my phone buzzed again. This time, a text from his cousin, the same one whose wedding started it all. "I'm sorry for what happened.
We all laughed that day."
We shouldn't have." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "You laughed because you didn't know who you were laughing at." Then I put my phone away, feeling lighter. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to him. I was living for us. 2 months later, the courthouse smelled like disinfectant and tension. Reporters hovered near the steps, microphones ready. I walked past them in a navy suit, head uncovered, bald, proud, unshaken. Evan looked up from the defendant's table. His expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion on his face. The confidence he wore so easily was gone, replaced with the pale realization that every smirk, every insult, every lie had led him here. His lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but he wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on me. During testimony, the prosecutor presented the records, my spreadsheets, his forged signatures, the offshore accounts I'd quietly traced. Every time my name appeared on a document, he flinched. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't destroy my husband," I said. "I just stopped protecting him." The courtroom was silent. Afterward, as I exited, one of his old business partners approached me. "You saved us," he said. "We never knew how deep his fraud went. You kept the company afloat for years." I nodded politely, but inside, a different thought bloomed. I saved myself. Outside, the press swarmed. Mrs. Ward, do you have a comment? I stopped briefly, glancing at the cameras. Just one, I said. Never underestimate a quiet woman who keeps receipts. That quote would lead every headline by sunset. When I got home, Grace was waiting with her favorite blanket, her cheeks glowing pink from recovery. Mommy, she said, does this mean the bad part is over? I kissed her forehead. Yes, baby, it's over. But in my heart, I knew something even deeper. It wasn't just over. It was earned. 2 weeks after the trial, the world couldn't stop talking. News anchors called it the quietest revenge in history. Social media flooded with clips of my testimony, that one sentence echoing across every platform. Never underestimate a quiet woman who keeps receipts. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened the bakery I dreamed about for years, Grace's Table. A cozy place by the ocean, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk, every pastry decorated with a tiny pink ribbon. For every item sold, a portion went to families battling pediatric cancer. On opening day, customers lined the block. Grace, wearing her new wig, cut the ribbon herself. For brave girls like me, she said proudly, and the crowd cheered. As I handed out cupcakes, a familiar voice spoke behind me. Evan's mother. Lena, this is beautiful. I turned slowly. It is. She hesitated, guilt flickering across her face. He's in prison. He asked about Grace. She's healing, I said softly. Better than most adults I know. She nodded, eyes glassy. I'm sorry for what we said that day. For laughing. I smiled, small, calm, final. You were right to laugh, Mary. It helped me see clearly who stood with me and who stood against me. That night, when the shop closed, Grace fell asleep in my arms. Outside, the sign glowed faintly, a symbol of what pain can become when it's repurposed. I looked at her sleeping face and whispered, You saved me, too, sweetheart. Because revenge hadn't been about punishment anymore. It had become a transformation. 6 months later, I stood barefoot on the beach behind the bakery, the same beach where I once cried alone after that wedding. The tide whispered against the sand, carrying away the last remnants of anger I didn't realize I'd still been holding. Grace ran ahead, chasing gulls, her laughter bright against the sunset. Her hair had started to grow back, soft curls like feathers. She turned and shouted, Mommy, we match again. I smiled, touching the faint stubble on my own head. We always will, baby. The past felt like another lifetime. The humiliation, the betrayal, the public whispers, all of it had burned away in the quiet power of what followed. Evan had been sentenced to 6 years. His company was dissolved, and every stolen asset was recovered, most redirected to a cancer research foundation in Grace's name. Irony had a perfect sense of balance. When the news reached me, I didn't gloat. I simply baked a fresh batch of honey cakes and donated them to the hospital ward where Grace once fought for her life. The same nurses who'd comforted me during those nights now smiled when they saw us. You did it, Lena, one of them said. No, I replied, watching Grace hand a cupcake to another child. We did. As the sun sank below the water, I closed my eyes and let the wind fill the silence around us, soft, endless, forgiving. For years, I thought revenge meant destruction. But it wasn't about fire. It was about freedom. And mine came wrapped in peace, frosting, and a daughter's laughter. The woman they once mocked for her bald head? She rebuilt everything they tried to break.